Hey everybody. We still have a few minutes before 12, so just kind of hang tight. Hey, just make sure you are on the chat box whenever you submit a question. Make sure it's going to panelists and attendees. I think it wants to default to panelists right when you kind of sign on, but just make sure you have it going to panelists and attendees. It's just right below panelists. Switch it to that just so the other attendees can see your question. We'll be able to see it no matter what, but just make sure the other folks, know what the question is and all that good stuff. So we'll get started here in just a little bit. Appreciate y'all joining us today. I don't know if you're on your lunch break or if you're just not working still, or you might be retired, but thanks for hanging out with us today. And again, we'll get started in just a couple minutes. Y'all enjoy this picture of this cool northern shoveler while I check out for a second. Told you I was just going to check out for a second. Y'all can go ahead and start using that chat box. If you don't mind, tell us where you are from. Let's give it like 2 more minutes. And remember, in the chat box, make sure you have your message going to panelists and attendees, not just the panelists. Alabama. That's pretty awesome. Ma'am, that's cool. Thanks for joining us. Y'all have a lot of ducks over that way. You're a little bit closer to that central flyway than we are. Lawrence, thanks for joining us. Greenville, hopefully you're already seeing some ducks over at Lake Conisty out in Greenville. If not, they're coming down. And just make sure the chat, or I'm sorry, whatever you put in the chat box is going to panelists and attendees, not just us, not just the panelists. Anybody got a favorite duck out there? The northern shoveler, the one that you're looking at, is slowly becoming one of my favorites. I don't know if I can narrow it down to just one, but I love a hooded merganser. I used to not, but I love them now. Man, that northern shoveler is just really spectacular. Buffleheads are amazing, Grace. Wood duck, I mean, it's hard not to just love that one. That should be my favorite one. I don't know if you've ever seen a mandarin duck, but it's kind of like the exotic wood duck's cousin. I don't know if they're related, maybe way down the line, but if you haven't seen one, look up a mandarin duck. Super gorgeous. Indian Land, South Carolina, welcome. Yeah, hooded mergansers are amazing. All right, I am going to give it just about 30 more seconds. It's 12:01. We'll start here in just a second. Again, make sure your whatever you're typing in the chat box is going to all or panelists and attendees, not just the panelists. So everybody can see your question or your comment. So panelists and attendees. All right, we got a couple votes for wood duck. As gorgeous as a mallard is, nobody ever picks that one really, right? Just because they're kind of all over the place. It's kind of like the cardinal. But if we were living in a place, in Antarctica for our whole lives and we moved here, I bet a mallard would be up there on our list of ducks to see, or our favorite. Yeah. Gene mentioned seeing wood ducks and hooded mergansers in nest boxes. Yeah, they're both cavity nesters. A lot of people don't know that there's other ducks besides wood ducks that nest in cavities. Common goldeneye, which I don't think breed here in South Carolina. That should be a very northern species. Bufflehead, they're another cavity nesting bird. I think a common merganser also nests in a cavity. I think the red-breasted merganser makes a nest on the, on the ground, but I think I know the hooded is a cavity nester, and then the common merganser, I think, is a cavity nester too. All right, some homeschoolers. What's going on, Heather? All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. We have BB to the side. She is a director of education, and she's with us today, but she's going to be interrupting me from time to time with y'all's questions. We did do a waterfowl class last year. You see this photograph right here. It's from Cameron Foster. He's one of our board members and great photographer, and he knows a lot about ducks, and he taught a class last year, and it's on our YouTube channel about ducks as well. So I'm going to go over some species that, he didn't talk about. He got into a little bit more of the, I think, the behavior and, maybe what they eat. I'll touch on that just a little bit, but I kind of want y'all to just find as many ducks as possible this winter. So we're just going to be basically talking about ID characteristics, what to look out for. Sounds, we'll practice those. I'm a big sound guy. I love finding birds by sound, by ear. So we'll go over some of that too with our dabbling ducks. I don't have too many sounds for the diving ducks, but thanks for joining us. My name is Jay Keck, K-E-C-K. I'm the Habitat Education Manager. Grew up on Lake Murray, so I love looking at the ducks growing up. Began duck hunting, whenever I was 14. This isn't, a hunting class or anything. We're talking about identification. Just really love ducks, everything about them, the habitat that they're in. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're at a wastewater, treatment center, it's usually pretty, something that water can do, anywhere it goes, it just makes things pretty. And you find, pretty ducks on them a lot of times, especially this time of year into February, March, and then, they start heading back north at that time. Thanks for joining us. I work for South Carolina Wildlife Federation. And again, BB, who is with us, is the director of education. And if you have a question, just pop it in the chat box. She will interrupt me and ask me that question. Let's see. If you're having problems with sound, we have one person that just popped that in the chat box. I'm hoping maybe it's just your volume, not to say the obvious, but maybe just increase that a little bit. If that's not the problem, maybe go to settings and try to work it out there. I hope that gets worked out for you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get going. All right, so winter waterfowl. We do have some that are year round. We'll talk about some of those here, but we're going to be talking about the migratory ones that come here. And I'm a big time warbler guy. I love the songbirds, especially the warblers. They offer so much color. The tanagers, the orioles that we have. But in the winter, a lot of people just think about the brown birds, the sparrows. Some of them can be colorful, but most of the time you just find a brown bird, right? But we do have in our waterfowl just an assortment of color that can just kind of blow your mind. And we'll see some of their wings today. Look at those, and I hope you'll be kind of stunned how much color they have. And this is one of the most colorful birds that we do have here in South Carolina, especially this time of year. And I might call it a spoonbill. That's as hunters, that's what we call them, but it's a northern shoveler. And we'll talk about, I have this down here: size, color, bill shape, bill color. Okay. Habitat, certain ducks like certain wet habitats, and other ducks don't like that same habitat. Wing beats, how can you identify a duck by that? Flock flying pattern, when they are in flocks, some of them fly differently. Where's the white? That's kind of a popular thing to use right now to identify ducks. And then use your ears always. But first, just real quick, we do have a cleanup at Archer's Lake on this Saturday, so December 4th. It's from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. If you haven't signed up and you want to, just go to our website under the events. I think it's like the second or third thing down. Just register for that. We'll have pizza and drinks afterwards. We'll have 4 canoes. The South Carolina Aquarium is going to join us. We're going to be collecting the data on all the trash that we are picking up. So we can use it for conservation and get this state and hopefully the world to become a cleaner place and a better place for us and wildlife. All these pictures were taken here. None of them at Archer's. Well, no, the great blue heron right here was taken by Cameron Foster at Archer's Lake, and you can see the trash in the background behind that blue heron. But then you have an anhinga. This picture was taken at a pond really close to Archer's Lake. With some plastic around its bill, and then a green heron that was on the Saluda River, right around Saluda Shoals, with some twine, probably fishing twine around its beak. So, you know, it does affect wildlife. It affects our birds that we love so much. And I have led bird walks for waterfowl at Archer's Lake, and that's the one that we're cleaning up on Saturday. So if you don't have anything to do, it's going to be beautiful. And you want to do some good, want to help some wildlife and collect some trash with us, please come out there. We'd love to have you. All right, well, let's start with our duck that we have year round. You know, it is a migratory duck. It's kind of like a pine warbler, you know, the yellow warbler that we have year round. In the summertime and springtime, we have less of them, although they're still abundant. But in the wintertime, you know, I feed birds in the wintertime, and sometimes I'll see a dozen around the feeder on really cold days, just because some have, you know, migrated down to warmer areas. Same thing with the wood duck. They're always, you know, relatively common if you know where to go to find them, but they're even more abundant in the winter time, since more ducks migrate here to get out of the cold. So some people call them Carolina duck, summer duck. It is a wood duck. It's a medium-sized duck. We don't consider it small. We don't consider it large. 18.5 inches, 1.5 pounds. And I think, you know, 2 or 3 folks said that was their favorite duck, and it's easy to see why. Even the female is elegant, you know, looking. And it is a cavity nester. So it doesn't matter if you're on Lake Murray, you know, any of the, that's just the closest one to me. So that's the one I always mention. Lake Marion, Hartwell. I mean, we've got a bunch of lakes around here. If you're on the water, please consider putting up a wood duck box. Even if you don't get a wood duck, you might get something cool like a screech owl. They use those wood duck boxes quite a bit. And that's a species in decline. But I was about to call it a Carolina duck. Wood ducks, you know, were in trouble in the early 1900s. And then duck stamp money, you know, came around, hunting limits, you know, came around, and then people started putting up cavity or nesting boxes, and it really, really helped this duck, and their population is nice and stable right now. So these fellows right here, they are installing prothonotary warbler boxes on the back of wood duck boxes, which I think is pretty darn cool. And that prothonotary is a species in decline, but that's in Camden. I'm not sure if there's any gators over there, but it doesn't look like they're too concerned. Let's listen to a male wood duck, and turn your volume up. I'll just give you a split second to do that. I'll make sure mine is up. I don't know if that affects yours or not, but here's the male, and it's the weaker of the two vocally. So I was deer hunting this weekend, and you know, there's a creek nearby, and I heard both the male and the female. Never saw them, but I knew that they were back there. And here's the female, a lot louder. So if you've, and there's it sounds like a blue jay also in that audio right there in that recording. So if you've never heard or have seen one, you know, you practice the sounds. Go to allaboutbirds.org or go to Merlin Bird ID, practice the sounds, and you will see more birds if you learn their sounds. You'll know what you're hearing, and then if you've never seen one, you can go find it. So great duck, and one that's pretty common here and abundant here. So I guess our most common duck that we have here, doesn't matter if you're going to Walmart, you might see one in the retention pond or detention pond there, or Lake Murray or a river around here, there or at the coast or in the mountains. You have a good chance of seeing this beautiful duck. And it's one of our biggest ducks that we have. In terms of dabbling ducks. So dabbling ducks are the ones that kind of turn upside down. Well, I guess head down, butt up. All right, and that's how they feed. A lot of times they're okay at walking, so you'll see them on land a lot. They'll eat grains and other things, you know, that they find on land. 24 inches long, so a couple feet, to, almost 3 pounds. So pretty heavy bird. And here's the female decrescendo call. And it's going to start off with her, and then the flight call, and then the male calls. And you know, male calls usually are a little bit quieter than the female calls, at least with ducks. That's the flight call. And then you got this big male that just kind of squeaks a little bit. And that call that you heard initially, the first one, that's the one that duck hunters use. They have big competitions, you know, every year who to find out who the best, you know, basically female mallard caller is. Pretty cool. It's kind of a big deal. And, you know, these calls go for $200-300 or more sometimes. A duck that is about the same size is the black duck. So very visually, you know, similar, at least to the female mallard. But you can see here, you know, look at here, you know, there's no white, but then let's see, you've got the female here, and the male has this too. On the edges of the wing patch, you know, where it's blue, they have mallards have white, and then the black ducks do not have that white. And you can see that they are this chocolatey color, a lot darker than a mallard, but they are very similar. So, you know, I don't really see too many black ducks here in the Midlands where I am. It doesn't mean that they're not here. But, you know, if I say if I had a cousin that came over here from wherever that didn't have black ducks and he was just dying to see one, I would take him to the coast, probably Bear Island, Cape Remain, somewhere along the coast to try to find these black ducks, more so than in the Midlands. So
Jay,
yeah.
Jay, are the black ducks rare? That was a question that came in.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I've been up in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and that's the only duck that we saw. You know, and we probably saw 150 of them. Here in South Carolina, they're less common. I wouldn't call them rare, but they're less common than some other ducks. But once you go down to the coast again, you know, Bear Island is closed for a while because of hunting, and some of those national wildlife refuges are either closed or temporarily closed because of hunting. But once the hunting season, or once those gaps are kind of in between the hunting season, allow you to go there, black ducks are relatively, I wouldn't call them easy to find, but they're not, I wouldn't call them uncommon. But again, if I was going to show you one, I wouldn't do it here in Chapin or around Lake Murray. I would take you down to the coast and find the black ducks there.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good question. So, you know, they are very similar. You know, when you look at that female mallard and then you look at a black duck, you're like, how in the world can I tell them apart? But check, I love this picture right here that comes from Merlin Bird ID, but it shows how much different or how different they look. And here you can see, even from a distance, you know, get you a good pair of binoculars, you know, Vortex, Nikon, you know, make really good binoculars that you're not going to spend $1,000 for. And you'll be able to see this, you know, you'll be able to tell that this dark looking mallard-like duck does not have white on the edges of the blue patch there. And that tells you that it's probably a black duck, right? But you can see the white on the blue patches. You can see how much darker these black ducks are, and you'll get used to that. Again, I love going to Bear Island to watch waterfowl. We have our classes there usually, and each time I can't remember a time that we did not see a black duck. You know, we see black ducks, and you can just once you practice, you can kind of get in your mind how dark they are, how much darker they are than a mallard. But just look at that female there compared to the female mallard, you know, chocolate. And this is, you know, almost kind of gray compared to her. And the male has the yellow bill, and the female has the olive, you know, type of bill or colored bill. Same with the mallards too. Nice bright yellow bill here, and then you can see the female. Juvenile males will have that kind of bill color as well, but a nice mature male or close to mature male should have the yellow bill, and then you have the females right here. And then you see the black duck here, male, and then female. See the difference in the bill color? And then the color again between the mallards and the black ducks. And there's also something called a mottled duck, which again it basically looks like a female mallard. It's darker than a mallard, but lighter than a black duck. And the only way to identify it is go out there and practice. It does not have white edges on the speculum or the wing patches either. You know, it's pretty similar to the black duck, but it just has this really creamy brown head, really light brown head, and not quite as dark as a black duck. And you'll get used to seeing that and practicing it and knowing what that duck is whenever you see it, if you practice. And then whenever you start getting good at it, you know, something's going to throw you a curveball, and you're going to call me and say, what in the, you know, world is going on? What is this duck? And then I'm going to say it's probably a hybrid. So this is a hybrid mallard with a black duck. And the only reason I know that is that's what it was listed as on allaboutbirds.org. So you can tell that it's a lot darker than a mallard should be. But you can see the green head right here, the yellow bill. So that tells us even if this doesn't have a green head right here, we should know that this is a male because it does have this beautiful bright yellow bill. And you can see that a little bit of the blue right there, the wing patch. And we didn't even listen to the black duck. Let me play that. It's hard to tell the difference between a black duck and a mallard by ear. So if we were on a walk together and you said, hey, Jay, is that a mallard or a black duck? I'd say, I don't know. Let's go find out. And we've done that before, you know, because they do sound so similar. So if you hear one and you don't know what it is, it's okay. You know, the experts don't sometimes either because they can be hard to identify by ear sometimes. Now this one here, you know, this beautiful northern pintail. I mean, I think it's one of the prettiest birds, you know, that we have in the country. You know, where I am here in the Midlands, we're not going to see them too often. They do pop onto the lakes from time to time. But again, if you go down to the coast, to these wetlands, to these tidal marshes, the shallow water that they have around vegetation, you have a lot better chance of seeing all the ones that we're going to talk about today, almost all the ones that we're going to talk about today. So here's the beautiful whistling sound that the male pintail makes. Real subtle. Isn't that neat? The females give kind of a harsh like mallard call. I'm not going to play that. So many of these ducks sound like female mallards. The female pintail, you can see this tail right here. Let me go back to this mallard. You see how short and stubby that one is. Now let's go back to her, and she's called pintail for a reason, right? He's definitely got the pintail going on, but she's not lacking in it. She's probably one of the longer tailed dabbling ducks, if not the longest tailed dabbling duck female. But beautiful, elegant looking female, and they're pretty sitting in the water as well. But the color, the males have the color, besides brown. And the male pintail, northern pintail, is absolutely stunning. So he's cheating. He beats the other large ducks by a couple inches in length, but that's because he's cheating with those long tail feathers there. You can see how much more slender, skinnier, less weighty he is than the mallard, about a pound less than the mallard. And this pintail is he macking or is he quacking on this female mallard? And he could be. Mallards hybridize with all sorts of ducks. They hybridize with Gadwall. I've even read that they've hybridized with teal, and teal are tiny. So I don't know, who's doing the macking there in that circumstance. But there's probably at least 5, 6, 7, 8 species that they hybridize with or can hybridize with, if not more. So this isn't an uncommon sight, out in the duck world. One of my favorite sounds is and one of my favorite ducks, which is just gorgeous, is the American Wigeon, and probably my favorite sound. And we'll listen to that now. So yeah, the male and then the female there. Again, usually females are a little bit harsher when it comes to the sound than the males are, but that male does make a beautiful, beautiful whistle there. It's a lot smaller, than a mallard by a few inches at least, but the tail is much longer. I don't think you can really make a mistake in identifying the mallard and the American Wigeon. They're a lot. It looks like somebody airbrushed them, a lot smoother looking, smaller overall, longer tail, with a kind of a different appearance, right? I guess maybe, you might have trouble with the female, but look at the black bill tip, the blue bill, same on the male. But absolutely gorgeous bird. And I'm going to sound like a broken record, but go to Bear Island. But they can be seen more commonly than a pintail, or a black duck here in the Midlands. Go to farms that have ponds. It doesn't matter if it's wooded or not. Go to golf courses that have ponds. You might get lucky and find one. Archer's Lake, the pond that we're cleaning up this Saturday. I've seen one there, and it hung out for a couple weeks there, right by a mall in Irmo. So, kind of adaptable bird, at least during migration. And so you just look at all the water, that's around you, whether you live on the coast or in the mountains or, somewhere where I am. Just go to ponds, go to fields, that have creeks, that have rivers, that have ponds, by them, and see what you can find out there. If you don't go out, you're not going to find these ducks. They're out there to be found. Blue-winged teal. I mean, just look at this patch right here. You've got the blue shoulder with the white underneath, and then the green wing patch right here. Pretty darn spectacular bird. Small bird, all right, 16 inches. So a lot smaller than a mallard, and not even weighing in at 1 pound. But beautiful male right here. The female looks like a shrunken mallard. So very, very similar, but once you see one next to a mallard, it's going to look tiny, tiny, tiny. So once you kind of start thinking about that, if you're trying to ID birds by yourself or you're with somebody, taking them out there, if you see just a tiny looking mallard, it's probably not a mallard. It's a good chance that it is a teal, but it could be a northern shoveler as well. Then you would have to look at bill shape and bill size. All those things can help you make that correct identification. The female has a cute little decrescendo call, kind of like a mallard. And those tiny little male calls, you know, those tiny little squeaks and whistles. But the female does really sound like a tiny version of a mallard. It's kind of like the woodpeckers that we have in South Carolina. You've got the giant pileated or pileated woodpecker just making all sorts of noise. Then you have this tiny diminutive, what is it? Downy woodpecker that just makes, you know, these small sounds. It's same thing with the birds. The smaller the bird, a lot of times the smaller the sound. Then you're probably thinking about the Carolina wren and you're like, not all the time. And you would be right. Those are some noisy, loud birds. So fresh or brackish wetlands, but they can be seen here in the Midlands. They can be seen in the upper state. There's a bunch of them down at the coast, but there are places around the Midlands and the upper state that you can find these wonderful birds as well. Bear Island, again, is a great place. Finney's Swamp. Cameron talks about that swamp down around Augusta in detail in his class that he had last year. He loves going down there. He has a map of it. If you've never been there, it's a really cool place, and I encourage y'all to get down there and explore it. So northern shoveler, look at these bills that these things have. I mean, just funky, funky birds. And this one, you can kind of, you know, see the blue, the white, the green, you know, close cousin to the blue-winged teal. You know, it's not that big of a bird, 19.5 inches long and then 1.5 pounds. So about a ½ pound, you know, more in weight than the teal. So it is larger than teal, but quite a bit smaller than a mallard. So coastal wetlands, marshes, lakes, agricultural, wastewater ponds, just go out and find some water and you have a shot at finding a shoveler. If you want to go out and almost kind of guarantee a chance of seeing it, guess where you go? That's right. You go to Bear Island. I don't think I've ever been there in February without seeing a northern shoveler. Let's listen to the sounds. Then you heard that red-winged blackbird, you know, telling us there's water around. You've got a shoveler and a blackbird. So she sounds kind of similar to a mallard, right? Isn't it kind of funny that these birds kind of sound alike, the hens, and they look alike? And then you've got the males that make all sorts of squeaks and whistles and noises, and you know, look quite different. So I don't know if y'all know this, but there's another uncommon duck that we get here every now and then with the blue right here, and then the white, and then the green wing colors. Does anybody, I'm just kind of curious, does anybody know which duck that might be? Y'all can pop your answers in the chat. So blue shoulders, white here, and then the green underneath. Does anybody know what that bird might be? It's a close cousin of the blue-winged teal and the northern shoveler. I don't see any chat or any responses. So it's a cinnamon teal. I don't have a picture of it, but it's an absolutely gorgeous bird. It's pretty darn rare here in South Carolina, but one place that has produced it in recent years is Bear Island, probably Cape Romaine too. I think I saw some sightings over there as well. But yeah, holy mackerel. I've never seen one before. I've only seen pictures, and that is high on my list to see. And we'll talk about how to find those birds, those rarities in a little bit. Let's see here. Let's go to Gadwall or the gray duck. And you can see this in the Midlands. You don't have to be at the coast to see this. It's a really cool duck. Even though it's kind of, you know, it's got muted colors. Has this kind of nice rufusy on the side and this black butt, you know. I don't try not to talk like that on my classes, but you know, other people do. And so I'm just quoting all those people that I go out on walks with. But yeah, it's got a black booty, and you can see that right here. It's with an American Wigeon. And when we think about looking for the white, you know, if you see this American Wigeon, you see the black butt and you might say, oh man, that could be a Gadwall. But all of a sudden you have this delineation of color, and then all of a sudden you have white. So you know it's not a Gadwall, right? The Gadwall is not going to have that unless there's some kind of mutation. So black butt, and then it goes to gray. You've you've got a Gadwall there. You know, a canvasback, I believe, might have black right there, but it doesn't look anything like a Gadwall. So when we're talking about dabbling ducks, a canvasback is a diver. But when we're talking about dabbling ducks, as far as I know, this is going to be the only one with an all black booty back here. Again, the American Wigeon, which are also flying right here, has that black, and then a nice bright white right in front of it. Length 21 inches, so not too much smaller than a mallard, and 2 pounds. So, you know, a good sized duck. I would say, you know, medium large duck. And let's listen to it sound. So you heard there was a frog in there too. It sounded like a chorus frog, but you heard the decrescendo, probably the hen, right? That sounded a lot like a hen, a mallard, right? And then the male afterwards. Let's see where to find this bird. Again, you can go to the coast, but ponds around the Midlands or wherever you are, if you're around the coastal plain. You know, just go to a pond, whether that's in a golf course or at a farm or a wastewater, you know, treatment facility. You have a good chance of finding these. Go to any of our lakes in the area, and you have a really good chance of finding a Gadwall. Not that uncommon of a bird. So I'm going to give y'all a little quiz, and to make y'all participate, I think the person that gets this, I'm going to send them a 12-ounce bag of coffee. So if you don't drink coffee, you don't really need to participate. But I'm going to send you a 12-ounce bag of Birds and Beans coffee. And I guess we'll connect, and you can tell me how to what I guess brew you prefer. But the first one who can tell me what all three of these ducks are accurately, I'll send a bag of coffee too. So if y'all use the chat box, what kind of ducks do we have here? We've talked about all of them today. This is for coffee now, so I want y'all to participate. And it's good coffee, Birds and Beans coffee. So we have, okay, Widgeon shop. Okay, so you got 2 out of the 3 right. There's no Widgeon in there. So we do, well, I'm not, let's see, Gadwall, you have one of them right. You got to get, let's see. Anybody know what this one is right here? Oh man, I might not be given, okay, we got blue-winged teal, right? Can anybody tell me all 3 of these? Blue-winged teal, we do have a Gadwall in there. You see the black booty. Now the tough one is this middle one. I want y'all to look at its bill, all right? And the reason I'm doing this is because I want y'all to kind of notice these finer details, not just on ducks, but here we go. We got a blue-winged teal, all right? Right here, we have a shoveler, and then we have a Gadwall. So Bradley Kelly, you know, you can email me, jay@scwf.org, jay@scwf.org, and I'll see what kind of coffee you like, and I'll send that to you. But yeah, we've got a blue-winged teal hanging out with its cousin, okay, the northern shoveler. And then we've got the Gadwall. And, you know, when you go to places like Cape Romaine, when you go to places like Bear Island and other places along the coast, I know I'm kind of focusing on those too. Santee National Wildlife Refuge is another one. Oftentimes you'll see, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 types of duck or species of ducks together, which is pretty darn neat to see. Tons of color out there. You know, I encourage you to go out there and take a peek at those. So good job, Bradley. Yeah, email me again and I'll get you that coffee. So when we talk about finding the white, you know, it's something that came out, I think in 2014, 2015, someone from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology taught a class and he was talking about using the white on ducks to help you with identification. So this is just a snippet from, you know, the class. I'm sure there's a brochure out there that has all of these listed, but you can see how it breaks it down in just black and white. which I think is kind of useful. So that might be a class that you want to take. Again, you can find that class, Where's the White, if you just Google it. But I think allaboutbirds.org is still offering it. It's a pay-for class, I believe, but I would say it's well worth it. And I would encourage you to do so if you want to identify more ducks. But where do you find green-winged teal? They are pretty early migrants. They even have an early hunting season for them. But again, lakes, coastal wetlands, marshes, swamps, you'll see them flying a lot of times with wood ducks. So that kind of tells you what kind of habitat that they like. You know, you think about swamps and wood ducks, but other birds, you know, will kind of frequent those areas as well. And one of those birds that does do that is the green-winged teal, but super small bird. Look how small, 15 inches. And 14 ounces, probably the lightest bird that we're going to talk about today. I think a bufflehead might be a hair shorter, but not by much. So a very, very, very small bird. And when you see them fly in flocks, as is with the blue-winged teal, just a sight to see. You know, compared to a mallard, they look like little hummingbirds, but you know, they're much bigger than a hummingbird. But just how erratic they are in flight, and you know, they create pretty darn big flocks and just move together really fluidly, and really pretty to see. I'll play this one too. Sounds like a teeny squeaky mallard, doesn't it? The hen. And yet again, another little squeak / whistle from the male. All right, so we'll get off of the dabbling ducks, the ones that kind of tilt over and filter feed, and we'll get into the diving ducks. Cameron Foster, you know, our board member, whose picture I started off with that northern shoveler, has this great picture of a hooded merganser, you know, throwing a crayfish in the air, and then, you know, obviously it caught it, but he had it, you know, framed or frozen with the crayfish in the air with the hooded merganser just about to eat it. So it was a pretty cool photo. So yeah, one of the favorite snacks of this guy is crayfish. But they eat fish, you know, these larger ones eat a lot of fish. So, you know, it's really not sought after, you know, by hunters, because they do taste quite dirty, watery, I guess, quite gamey. But just look how gorgeous these guys are. So the hooded merganser, you know, you can find those in more of those swampy areas. Coastal marshes, wastewater ponds, that's a great place for these birds, especially ones that have a lot of trees around them. Beaver ponds. So remember, think about trees. Swamps, other wooded wetlands, they're cavity nesters, right? They're kind of like wood ducks. So you find them in areas that are similar in habitat to what a wood duck would like. Then you got this one that looked like it stuck its beak in some kind of electrical socket and it got fried. But a red-breasted merganser, and we do see these in South Carolina quite frequently. You could probably find one every winter. Now these are abundant. You go to all sorts of ponds in the throughout the entire state, and you have a really great chance of finding this one. And the female looks like the male, just without any color. It's just brown, but she looks like Tina Turner's, you know, like that's what I call her, the Tina Turner of ducks, just because her hair is just so far out and just wild looking. She's a great looking bird. But this one right here, the red-breasted merganser, you want to go to bigger lakes or at the coast, you know, in big water. So if I ever go down to Charleston and you walk the battery, you know how the battery, you know, looks out into the water there. Nice big water. You find a lot of these types of birds out there. So great place to go birding in the wintertime for waterfowl if you've never done that yet. So the Charleston Battery is a place that I would recommend. You can see how small this one is. The hooded, 18 inches, 1.5 pounds. The red-breasted is quite a bit bigger, 23 inches, 2.5 pounds. And a bird that we, you know, it's really uncommon here in South Carolina, but every now and then, you know, we get this. It's the common merganser. So not so common here. It's more common up north. So is rare in South Carolina, but a pretty darn big bird, 25.5, almost 26 inches long and 2.5 pounds. So not as heavy as a mallard, but longer than a mallard. So large lakes, especially in the mountains, sightings recorded along the coast too. Gorgeous, gorgeous, funky, funky looking birds. So the divers that we have in South Carolina, and I'm not going to play sounds of all of these just because we'd be here all day long. I know y'all are working and got things to do, but I do want to just kind of show you the variety of birds we do have in waterfowl here in South Carolina. So again, I know I sound like a broken record, but wastewater ponds, I know it doesn't sound, very fancy. Might sound kind of gross, but it's not. They're fantastic places to go find ducks. They don't get hunted. Okay. The ducks aren't really spooky. They know they're safe there. So you can get some great looks at canvasbacks, which are pretty darn rare birds. Although you can find them almost every single year if you go out there looking. You find, redheads, and that's the name of the bird, redheads, in places like that. But notice how sloped the head is into the bill. I mean, it is just like a perfect little line right there. With the redhead, you've got this big lump right here, right? The forehead that goes down into this bill. If this was a canvasback, it would be shaped like that, a lot longer, and a lot more streamlined. But gorgeous, gorgeous bird, pretty darn big too, 22 inches and 3 pounds. So, big bodied bird. And they like to fly in flocks. A lot of times they'll fly in a V formation. Most ducks don't do that. Geese do that, but most ducks, kind of fly bunched up. So redheads, suburban ponds, ponds in a farm field, wastewater areas, but any place along the coast, a shallow water tidal flat, would be a good spot to find them. We have the ringneck duck right here, pretty small duck, and just absolutely stunning. It looks, again, like somebody airbrushed it. Some artist got a hold of this animal and just like did some really cool things with it. But it's called a ringneck duck because it has some kind of chestnut, ring around its neck. Nobody can really see it. They named it, a long time ago whenever they had a dead specimen in their hands and they could see it. But, you almost want to call it a ring-billed duck just because it has that ring right here and a little bit right here too. But, no other, these diving ducks right here, the scalp, they're kind of similar, right? But this one has this little spur, is what they call it, kind of comes up like that, like a thorn, and just this really cool line right here, almost looks like a Nike swish. Do y'all see that? Which these don't have, the lesser scalp or the greater scalp. But really cool bird. You find those in kind of backwater areas. You can find them in suburban ponds again, but sometimes you find them in ponds that are just kind of out there in the country. Just kind of a quiet area, and you'll find ringnecks sometimes out there, ringneck ducks out there. Lesser scalp, another smaller duck, 17 inches. And it does have a slightly peaked head right here. You can see that little tuft right there. And then we'll go over to this one. Okay. And this is a larger one, right? And it's got more of a front facing head. And I know these pictures are they make these look pretty similar. But once you go on the internet, Google lesser scalp versus, greater scalp, and you'll see plenty of pictures that show this kind of bullish forehead, right here, kind of bulging out, compared to the lesser scalp, which doesn't really have one. They have a curved back of the head. This one's a little bit flatter. Again, this one's a little bit bigger. Let's see. Oh, and this one will shine green if the light is good. The iridescent green in the head feathers will kind of shine through. The lesser scalp doesn't have that so much. But I always look for the head shape and think about habitat too. The lesser scalp are more inland, the greater scalp are more coastal. It doesn't mean we don't get them here. Every now and then we do. But similar looking birds, but they can be, you can figure out what you have whenever you go out there if you practice. Ruddy duck, a small bird, 15 and a half inches, a little over 1 pound, cute little thing, looks like a wren. If a wren mutated into a duck, this is what you get. And this is a female right here, really no color to it at all, but still kind of cute. The males can be really, really pretty. Chestnut colored, bright blue bill whenever they're in their breeding plumage. Just really spectacular, funny, goofy little birds. Cavity nesting, buffalo head right here. I think somebody said that they love the buffalo head, rightly so. They're absolutely stunning. You can see the male here, and it doesn't show the iridescence in its feathers, but once the sunlight hits it, holy mackerel, it is such a pretty bird. And then you have the nice muted, more muted colored females next to them. Short bird, 14.5 inches and 1 pound. So small bird. Then you have the cavity nesting goldeneye, or the common goldeneye. There's a couple or a few different, types of goldeneye, but this is one that if you did see one around here, it would probably be the common goldeneye. And, I got
Hey, Jay.
Go ahead.
So we had a couple of questions. I'm working on finding out which ducks are protected, are not considered game species. And I'm gonna drop that in when I get that response back from my friend. And then we also had a couple of questions. What time of day is best time to look for most of these? My guess would be dawn and dusk, but what do you got?
Yeah, well, our class, whenever we go out to look for ducks at Bear Island, we get there early so we can see the swans there. They have mute swans and the tundra swans there. But then, then we go into Bear Island and start looking. So early morning is the best time, but you can still go out, late morning and still have some luck, especially in these compounds that have, they're basically a sanctuary. So those ducks might be sleeping there in the middle of the day, which offers you a good opportunity to get a cool picture of them. So anytime, whenever we talk about birding, I always say morning, and then, a couple hours before dusk, I guess.
All right.
Yeah. And, the ones that you can hunt, it kind of fluctuates depending on their numbers. People really don't go after a ruddy duck just because it's kind of it's not a duck that people really go after. It's kind of a cartoonish little duck. I don't think it tastes great.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's some taste issues too with what, yeah. But legally, so I sent a message and I'm waiting to hear back. I just didn't know which ones specifically were off limits or were not considered a game species.
Yeah, I don't know if we've talked about any of them. The common loon, the common loon, the common merganser, you might not be able to. I know the red-breasted merganser you may be able to hunt. I know this one is a huntable species, but yeah, I'd be interested to hear too. Which ones you can or can't take here in South Carolina.
And I'll make sure in the follow-up email that if I don't hear back from the biologist and the folks today, I'll make sure that gets dropped in the email. Okay. Also, another question was, do we have common loons in South Carolina, specifically in the upstate, or could a ruddy duck female look similar to a common loon?
So a common loon is gigantic compared to a ruddy duck. Ruddy duck is tiny. You could probably fit 10 ruddy ducks on the back of a common loon, or, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 of them. That's how small a ruddy duck is. But a common loon is big. And yeah, we have them here, especially in the wintertime. I remember I saw a raft of them. That's just what we call a large group of waterfowl. It could be coots, in the water swimming around. But I've seen 27. I remember the number, 27 loons just out in the middle of Lake Murray one time, just in their own little group or a raft. Now, do they breed here? I don't think anywhere in South Carolina, maybe in the mountains. I'd have to look at the range map, but that's a bird that breeds, further north. And if you've never heard one, man, I really recommend you going up there, up north to find one, or a pair, calling back and forth. My wife, her family has a place in New Hampshire, and we go up there, or we used to. in the summertime. And every single morning, every night, and sometimes throughout the day, we would be able to listen to those loons. So if you've never heard one, look it up on Merlin Bird ID. I'm not talking about those birds today, but one of the prettiest sounds, I think, on the planet. The common loon. There are other types of loons too, but look up the common loon. They have the prettiest sound. But here's some funny sounds. Again, I'm not going to play one for all these, but I just kind of want to go through just the diversity of sounds that these ducks make. So greater scaup, the larger of the two scaup. Oh, shouldn't have cut it off so soon. So in my brain, I'm thinking that this guy's really trying, the woman's really not giving him too much of a interest. And all of a sudden he throws in that last little note there to try to change her mind. He might be overdoing it right there. But that's the greater scaup, just kind of a not really ducky sound. Here's the ruddy duck. That's the male doing a display call. And that's a sight to see too. And then you've got the male, which I think sounds like a frog. And then you have a female that I think sounds like a pig. No offense. It almost sounds like an anhinga. So just to probably hear these birds, you probably have to go further north, where they are actually, doing their breeding. So you might not hear those sounds here, maybe at the tail end of the season, in March, if they're still here. But you probably will have to go up north to find those birds, or to at least hear those birds. So the scoters that we have here, they can be seen throughout the entire state. Obviously, you're going to see more around the coast. But big bodies of water like Lake Murray can hold them from time to time. Any of the bigger lakes in South Carolina, really, really cool ducks. We got stranded in, I think, January, in the middle of Lake Murray one time on my dad's boat. We call it a tin can for a reason. And a lot of times the tin can doesn't want to start. And so it wasn't starting. And so my brother and I were just kind of floating along, letting the wind push us. And I was lucky enough to get pushed into, or pretty close to, some white-winged scoters. And that was back in February 2014. So, they do come here from time to time. You don't have to be on the coast. So it is a treat whenever we see a rare bird like this further inland. Black scoter, they're quite common along the coast, seen quite often in the wintertime. And then you have surf scoters. But look at those bills. I mean, just really funky looking birds. So not huge, 19 and a half inches, 19 and a half, 21 and a half. This one's pretty beefy, 3.5 pounds, 2 pounds here, 2.5 pounds. So, they've got some weight to them, but not the longest birds or ducks that we have. They eat a lot of mollusks, all sorts of clams, oysters, some of them eat. The bigger one here will eat fish. I didn't read anything about these two eating fish, crustaceans, and they do eat some plant matter too. And it's kind of cool. I read that they'll just grab a clam if it's stuck to, a rock or, some kind of piece of wood or whatever it's stuck to. They'll just kind of wiggle it off and then pop it off and then, take it to the surface and break it open somehow. I guess they have pretty strong bills, but really, really neat birds that we have. And you do have a chance to see one, even if you don't live at the coast. I just wanted to throw in a little bit of information on geese, and we just have a few more minutes here. Ross's goose, really, really small. Think about that mallard being 24 inches long. And this guy right here as a goose is only 25 inches long. So really, really similar to a snow goose, just a lot smaller. So you've got half of the body weight, a little less than half of the body weight, and several inches shorter in length, not height. But I'm sure height too. It's not as tall, but it's quite a bit shorter in length than the snow goose. And you can see a picture of the Canada geese right here with the Ross goose among it to show you the size difference of those birds. So how do you tell the difference between a Ross's goose and a snow goose? Well, the snow goose, this one's not a great example, but it can have oftentimes this kind of yellowish smudginess on its face, where this is the Ross's goose and it does not have that. It's almost always completely white. The bill, I mean, just look at that bill. It's very, very small. Look at this one compared to the Ross's goose, a lot larger. So everything about that bird is larger. You know, it's kind of like a downy woodpecker versus a hairy woodpecker. You know, the downy woodpecker, if you could just pop its bill into its head and you wouldn't be able to see it. The hairy, you know, if you popped its bill into its head, it would probably come out the other side. You know, you could probably hide this bill in the Ross's, you know, headspace right here. And this one right here would probably try to be, you know, bulging out here, just kind of give you a visual of that, which might be kind of gross actually, now that I think about it. But this one also kind of smiles. Look at this little Elvis impersonation here. This one's got a little bit of that, but not nearly as big. These almost look black whenever you see them out in the field, and it looks like they're grinning. And you'll read about that too. They have the grin where the Ross's goose does not have that grin. Another neat goose that we have here from time to time is the greater white-fronted goose. And I've seen this one and this one in some random pond outside of Columbia, out in Hopkins, in a suburban area. I mean, there were houses all over the place. It was full of litter, which is unfortunate. And I got two lifers, being the Ross goose and the great white-fronted goose, here in South Carolina, in one of the dirtiest ponds I think I've ever seen in outside of Columbia. But really beautiful birds. I wish I would have seen them in a prettier place, but it was nice, you know, seeing them where I did see them, just because they're such pretty birds. So, you know, if you got this one, it's a little bit smaller than the snow goose, and then you've got this one that's smaller than both of them. All these pictures, most of them are from Merlin Bird ID. If you don't have that app, I suggest you get it. It's really good to practice sounds and to practice the visual identification of them too. They eat mostly plants. Every now and then they'll go for insect larvae, but they eat mostly plants. So finding the ducks, and we'll wrap up here in just a couple minutes. Use eBird. I mean, no matter where you are in the world, but let's just keep it to South Carolina. No matter where you are in South Carolina, you can use eBird, look up the county you're in, pull up the bar charts, and you can see what kind of ducks they have. If you have it on your phone, or I guess if you have it on your email too, or just on your computer, you can set it up where you get notifications of rare birds. So if you've never seen a tufted duck, I've never seen one, you would have gotten an alert a few years back that one was kind of hanging out, I think at Cape Romaine, down there at the coast. That's a European bird, and every now and then they'll come over to the East Coast. Really cool looking bird. So if you want to see more birds, use eBird, okay, the app, or the website, and get notifications. You can set it up like that, okay? Male ruddy duck. If you've never seen one, look how cute this bird is. That's another picture from Cameron Foster. Look at that chestnut color, the white cheek patch, the blue bill. I mean, just a spectacular bird. Use eBird to find these birds. You can see exactly where they're being sighted, or seen rather, throughout the state. Long-tailed ducks, we had those here in Lexington on Lake Murray a couple years back. I was too busy. I wasn't able to go find them, but they were at on the Broad River too. We had some sightings, I think, in Newberry County, and then in Lexington County as well. So for some reason, there was a push of those a few years back. But you know, without using eBird, I wouldn't have known that these ducks were around. So you can see more ducks by using that resource. Carolina Bird Club website is a great place to visit too. The website can tell you where to go find birds, you know, what time it's open a lot of times. I would always double check on the actual places website though, you know. If it's a National Wildlife Refuge, I'd check on their website just to make sure, or there's usually a phone number to call as well. So I've already said Cape Romaine, I think 23 times, Bear Island too. Santee National Wildlife Refuge is fantastic. Any of our large lakes, rent a boat. If you can, get with a few people that like seeing birds, rent a boat, just be safe, because a lot of those lakes are a little bit more shallow in the wintertime because they use them for energy. So they drain those lakes. So just be careful, bring your binoculars and find some really cool ducks out there, and drive our country roads. That's how I find a lot of the ducks that I see. I grew up in the country. I love driving around the country, and now I do it with a pair of binoculars. And I stop. Usually, it's safe to stop on the side of the road in many of these locations because it's so rural. And you know, I don't think a farmer really cares if you're just parked on the side of the road. It's never been an issue with me. So that's something that I would recommend. If you like ducks and if you like other birds and other animals, please consider buying the duck stamp, the federal duck stamp. It's called the Migratory Bird Hunting and Conservation Stamp. Short, we just kind of call it the duck stamp because as duck hunters, we have to buy one legally to hunt ducks. 98% of the money goes to land acquisition. There's not another conservation organization thing that exists that gives 98% to land acquisition. Hunting is on decline because people are playing sports and video gaming and on social, you know, all computers and all that kind of stuff. And there's way more birding people than there are hunters anyways. So imagine if we have, you know, 50 million bird watchers in the country buying duck stamps, how much land that would secure, not only for ducks, but for all those other species. You know, when I go down to Bear Island, we see roseate spoonbill, we see wood storks, we see ibis, glossy ibis, white ibis, you know, painted buntings, warblers, all sorts of things. That's all being, well, not necessarily in that spot. I'm just saying the habitat not only supports ducks, but it supports all sorts of other birds, you know, too. But look at this right here. So in South Carolina, you know, around 38,000 acres have been acquired, okay, secured from funds from the duck stamp. 6 million acres nationally, but 38,000 acres here in South Carolina. I bird with a fella that doesn't like hunting. He's my favorite person to bird with, but he will not buy a duck stamp. And he's been to Cape Romaine before. And I think I said this on the last webinar we did on ducks too, but I tell him if he goes to Cape Romaine again, that every third step he takes, he has to jump over that because that was purchased by, you know, the duck stamp. So about a third of Cape Romaine was purchased because of duck stamp funds. 52% of Savannah's National Wildlife Refuge was purchased. So I should take him out there and just have him hop around like a bunny. Not let him get on the half that was purchased by duck stamp funds. But you know, think about it. Think about purchasing those stamps. I buy two. I buy one as a hunter, and then I buy one as a birder because they are so important and they fund wildlife conservation so well. And this is from the Fish and Wildlife Service website on Cape Romaine. And remember, a third of that property was purchased through duck stamp sales. You're supporting over 293 species of birds. Let's see, raptors, waterfowl, wading birds, shorebirds, seabirds, 24 types of reptiles, 12 varieties of amphibians, 36 species of mammals have been recorded on the refuge. So you're not just supporting ducks, you're supporting all sorts of wildlife when you buy that duck stamp. So please consider it. We sell them, and buy one from us, please. And just one other thought, just think about it. Where does your food come from? What kind of habitat does it support? You know, as a hunter, you know, this is where we get our food from. Now you can't use lead shot anymore, but they still do in dove fields. I would love to see that law change to where we could only use steel shot. Plastic shells, you know, sometimes you can't find them all, and we see those out there. Maybe at some point, you know, they'll have some that decompose. But you know, think about the people that are eating the cows, you know, that are against hunting. This is a lot of times this is what you're supporting. This is a nice one right here. I didn't want to just I wanted to give some good examples too. And this is a chicken farm, but so is this one. And there is wildlife that is being you know, conserved here, preserved, you know, on these farms, but not so much here. So just something to kind of think about. And then I just want to say thank you. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Don't forget about the Christmas bird count. You can just Google Christmas bird count in South Carolina. I know the Carolina Bird Club has a nice map of South Carolina with some bubbles on it, and you can just click on the bubble and it'll show you who kind of organizes the count. But it's a way to kind of practice citizen science, go out with some people that love finding birds, love nature, and contribute to the data that's collected during the Christmas bird count. Really fun. And if you've never heard of it, you Google it and get involved. If you are interested, just give me a buzz or shoot me an email, and I'll kind of walk you through the process. And it is Giving Tuesday. And I didn't mean to reschedule this on Giving Tuesday. It just happened like that. So if you like this class, if you want us to reach even more people, consider a donation, and help us get to even more people throughout the state. BB, are there any other questions?
So there's been a little bit of chatter about the duck stamp, and if you are considered as a hunter in the stats for the state. And so the way I answered that, and you can add to it if you want, is, if you buy a duck stamp, you are not considered a licensed hunter. So to be considered a licensed hunter and to be counted as such for our state, you have to buy an actual hunting license. Also, a lot of people that buy the duck stamps just for conservation purposes. There are a lot of people that even buy licenses just for conservation purposes, with fishing and hunting. And Jay and I both do encourage that, because those hunters and anglers are paying, they're helping support money coming back to the state to protect the areas. So the more licenses we sell in our state, the more money we get to protect those critters. So, I know there are a lot of people that don't want to be tied in necessarily to a hunting or fishing, but just know that those hunters and anglers are contributing a huge portion to conservation, as well as those that are buying the duck stamps. So.
Yeah, well, and I know NPR had an episode a couple of years back, and the episode was about where is conservation money going to come from now that hunting and fishing is in decline. So that just the topic speaks to how much conservation is done through the purchasing of equipment and licenses from hunters and fishermen. Because there is a big decline, for the reasons that I kind of mentioned before, and I'm sure there's many other reasons. But people are getting disconnected. And as a hunter, I mean, it's one of my favorite memories growing up, going out there with my dad. We were horrible hunters. We basically walked in the woods a lot, but it was awesome. We saw all sorts of wildlife. I learned a lot with him and learned not to litter. So it's just not about, going out there and getting something, to shoot. That deer that we got would feed us almost for an entire year. And my buddy who doesn't buy the duck stamp, every single time we go out, he makes me a turkey sandwich. And I ask him, my joke is, do you think that the turkey slices grow on a tree? And obviously they don't grow on a tree, but he eats meat. It's hopefully, the idea of harvesting an animal, won't stop you from buying a duck stamp or buying a hunting license. It still does huge things for wildlife in terms of conservation. So please consider it. Any other questions about waterfowl identification?
Let's see. I think you've gotten everybody. Yeah, I think that's all the questions. If I missed something, feel free to shoot Jay a message, and because I already put your email in there.
Yeah, absolutely. jay@scwf.org.
And we'll follow up with more infos after we get it set.
Yeah, we'll get this thing saved, and then we'll send the video to y'all, and we'll pop it on our YouTube channel if you know anybody that might be interested in watching it. So thank y'all for spending your, I think it's Tuesday, right? Tuesday afternoon with us, and go out there and find you some ducks this winter. They're absolutely gorgeous.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, bye.